Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for Robbie Rants. Today we're going to be talking about Doomsday Clock number 6. That's right, everybody. We're going to be talking about Doomsday Clock number 6, and I'm going to go ahead and warn you, there are going to be spoilers in this video about Doomsday Clock number 6. So if you don't want to know what happened, stop watching the video, go read the book, come back here and watch the video. I will be talking about and showing you what happened in this book, Doomsday Clock number 6. We are now halfway through this awesome series. It's seriously been one of my absolute favorite comic books since it started. I've loved it so much. I think Geoff is doing a great job of crafting a story that has respect and reference to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen, but still has its own identity, its own themes, its own thing that it's trying to say. And I really, really like that. Gary Frank's artwork just astounds as usual. It's so much a tribute to what Dave Gibbons did back in the day on The Watchmen, but it's definitely just like the book on its own is definitely just it's got its own unique style. It's got its own definition. It's a very well-defined, realistic, highly detailed artwork style that really works, and it's got a nice classic sense of the storytelling mode, and it totally captures the feel and tone and atmosphere of the original Watchmen comic book, especially with Brad Anderson's colors. I love the colors in this book. It's amazing. So let's talk about this issue. I said it was probably the weakest entry of Doomsday Clock yet. And I only said that because it doesn't really move anything forward, and it doesn't really do a lot with a lot of different characters, but it does tell a very good origin story for Mime and Marionette. And it does that exceptionally well, and it does a really, really good job of it. It does almost feel like it's apart from the whole Doomsday Clock Watchmen type thing, but it's definitely in there. And if you look back at the original Watchmen series, it took the time to go back, especially like with issue 6, and tell an origin story. So I loved it. I thought it was great. We already have responded very well to these characters of the Mime and the Marionette, but now Johns has given them a backstory that's tragic, that's real, and that's melancholy, but it's still very, very engaging. So basically, the issue starts off with the puppets. So Marionette, her father was an immigrant into America. He was a puppeteer, so he made puppets. So that's where the fascination with the puppets have. So as the issue starts, it's got this really neat trick in the beginning of the story where it has the Joker doing the narration while the story's going on, while the images are showing what's going on with Marionette when she's a child and with her father. Her father, see, is being forced by corrupt policemen to make his puppets hollow in order to hold like money and contraband, things like that, right? So it's a typical story about a corrupt police force that is totally just taking advantage of its citizens, of the business owners of the time. And so that's really cool. So that's a neat little trick, because at the end you basically have Marionette's father doing the narration over a scene with the Joker set in present day, and that's super, super cool for me. I don't know, I really thought that was cool. So in the last issue, we see that the Mime and the Marionette have been captured by the Joker as well as Batman. So this whole issue, Joker has the Batman, but nothing really happens for that. He's just kind of in there. So Joker is on his way to interrupt this meeting that Riddler is holding on. Edward Nygma, he's holding this meeting with all these different supervillains, and they're going to discuss their response to all the craziness and riots that are going on because of the Superman theory. And this is something that Geoff Johns has been laying into this book, that the people are becoming convinced that the majority of American superheroes are done, and they're just government stooges, and they're created by the government and controlled by the government. So that's spread throughout here. In fact, there's even a few very D-list villains that kind of got towards the end of this issue. And even the villains don't trust each other because of this Superman theory, which is probably something that's been perpetrated by Lex Luthor. So they meet Joker, and it doesn't really go the way we thought it would. We kind of thought there would be a lot of explosions, but there's not a lot of explosions and explosive action in the first half of this book, but there's definitely a lot in the second half. So basically, they're telling the story about Marionette when she was a child. Her father made her a puppet, and that's the Marionette. And then she meets Marcos, who is the Mime. He's a kid from across the street. His kid of immigrant families. They're going to be speaking Spanish there, something to the effect of, he's your son, he's just weird. She says, you don't say something like that about your stepson. That's the translation there. So Joker just starts talking to him. He's like, look, you can't go around killing my dudes. Everybody knows that if they're my dudes, they're safe. The only people that can mess with my dudes are my dudes. So that's really interesting. And then Mime and Marionette do their little thing and they get out of there. But the Joker's just having so much fun with it. The characterization and the artwork on the Joker in this issue is absolutely fantastic. I love it so much. Like when the Joker accidentally shoots this dude that the Mime's punching, and he's like, oops, that's embarrassing. I just love stuff like that. But you got Marionette slicing off heads again, all kinds of stuff. But it also tells us backstory now. So the Marionette, what was her name? Something starts with an E, right? What is her name? Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Erica. So Erica, that's Erica and Marcos, right? So Erica's being bullied by some kids. They're saying terrible, nasty things about her father, and she's getting stomped, and she's about to just get completely beaten up by this group of people. And then this kid, Marcos, the silent kid who doesn't speak, whose parents own the store across from her father's puppet shop, he starts throwing bottles at these kids' heads and just tearing it out. And that's where we start seeing a little bit of the violence that has become out of the violence that she is seeing and the things that are going on around her. So I really like this because there's a nice juxtaposition from when she's a child and the way that they act and the way that we see them as adults as the Mime and the Marionette. I love that so much. So the Joker, then it keeps flashing back and forth and it goes back. So the Joker interrupts this meeting of the Riddler and the League of Villainy or whatever they're wanting to call it. And there are a lot of neat little references here. Like for instance, there's a reference that, for instance, someone says, there are rumors that the Amazons kidnapped Wonder Woman and dragged her back to Themyscira. So what's going to be happening to Wonder Woman? What's going to be going on there? It's kind of interesting. And also there is a reference here to Sanctuary, probably a reference to Heroes in Crisis, in which the Tattooed Man says, you all heard what happened to the first Tattooed Man at that Sanctuary place. It's screwed up. Another dude says the Lantern's other adversaries have left for the stars. So even some of the villains are clearing out. Things are changing up. And it's a direct reference to Heroes in Crisis, which makes it firmly set in the DC Universe in the near future. And that's kind of cool because it's almost felt like, especially with some of the delays on this book, that the initial plan that this all takes place a year in the future of the DCU right now, that's definitely had to slide back a little bit. So now we are definitely getting a little bit more placement. This is something that's going to be happening shortly after the events in Heroes in Crisis, which is shaping up to be pretty neat. So anyway, Erica and Marcos, they have this friendship that's budding. So she winds up getting her father to make a puppet for Marcos, and he, of course, is the mime puppet, and that's really cool. So then the policemen show up, and it's a scene that takes place before the scene from the beginning, so that was all foreshadowing. But then it's just really like it. So there's nice interaction between the villains in the present day, and there's really creepy stuff going on with the corrupt policeman and Erica's father in the original. So things at the villains meeting are getting pretty tense. Things are getting hype, and all of a sudden, this is just not going to work. And then all of a sudden, this blue dude's head just completely blows off, and oh my goodness, the comedian just randomly showed up. Apparently, he's looking for Ozymandias, and so that he winds up underneath Gotham City at this crazy assortment of criminals, and he just starts picking people off. The mime gets up there, he's acting like a jackass, trying to move the fire away from Marionette. He's very protective of Erica, and that's something that we see develop throughout this whole book. This whole book is like a Bonnie and Clyde story, and it does it so well, and these characters are so rich, and I just love them so much. So then all of a sudden, and another really funny bit is like as he's about to shoot the mime, the comedian all of a sudden sees this cheetah print come across, and he's like, what the fuck? And all of a sudden it's just gigantic, right? And so it's fun to see the comedian interacting with these villains, and he's just blowing them away, having fun. In fact, he blows the Riddler's knee off. That's crazy, and that's awesome. Also notice that Edward's back in his old school type costume, so that's some interesting stuff. And my absolute favorite moment in this book is when the comedian throws this grenade and all this chaos erupts, and he throws this grenade, and the Joker just says, what a perfect day this turned out to be. And I love it, and that look on his face is absolutely crazy. So Mime and Marionette, they make their escape from that. Then we kick back and we see what's really happened, what's going to be happening to Erica's father. So before this, Marcos's mother was basically killed by these corrupt policemen because she wouldn't go along with it. So we already got that happening. That's really sad and tragic. And now we're going to see, once again, Erica's father get beaten into submission into helping these corrupt policemen. And then as a result of that, he hangs himself. So Erica finds his body. He's hung himself. He's left a note saying, take the money in the register and run. So this is a whole thing that's being set up right here, that he killed himself in order for her to run away and make a better life. So that's something that's about to happen when the mime is trying to distract the comedian and the Joker and all the chaos that's going on in the villain meeting. He's trying to distract it to get away from Erica so that she can make a safe escape. She's not cool with that. She finds him to go to this place. They have a really touching moment together. But that's right after this. So, oh man, it's just so crazy this happens. So anyway, Erica finds her father's body. She's like freaking out. And then the policemen show up and she just grabs these scissors and she just takes out one of the policemen. And then Marcos comes in and just takes out another one. She strangles. So they're children, and that's their first kill right there. And then they run away, and then they basically show a bunch of flashbacks and flash forwards, I guess, to show that they've been together. They've always looked out for each other. They've grown together. They've grown in love together. They have a very romantic relationship, a very true, deep love for each other. And that look on Mime's face when she's like, you know, you're the only thing in this dark place that makes me smile. You're the only one I want. The look on his face, it's heartbreaking. It's so good. It's so rich. So they have this really touching moment together. And then the comedian shows up. The comedian shows up. He's like, look, you're going to tell me where Ozymandias is. And blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, in comes the Joker again. He has electrocuted the comedian, completely incapacitating him. And then he says, you know, I like you too. You make me laugh. And then Marionette says, you know what? I bet this guy knows where Dr. Manhattan is. Boom! So it doesn't feel like a lot happens, but actually a lot does happen. And a nice little touch at the end is the Joker reaches down, grabs the comedian's button, the smiley face, and puts it on and says, it hurts when I smile. Because he could use a good dentist, right? That's really cool. I like this book so much. I thought it was really great. And when I said it was the weakest in the series, it just meant it was the weakest as far as taking the story and pushing it forward, but it really was a very well-crafted comic book, one of the best comic books out of the week. Seriously, Doomsday Clock's just been killing it. I'm loving it. I want to know what you think about it, and if you picked up on things I didn't, let me know in the comments down below. Let's talk about Doomsday Clock number 6. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Also, it's really cool, a nice little Easter egg hunt to pay attention to what all the puppets are in the background and how it, you know, and there's a nice little thing because sometimes I think it might correspond thematically. For instance, the Night Owl puppet is one of the ones that has the money, the corrupt, the blood money in it, right? And the police find it. And I just think that's a nice little touching moment. And look how creepy that like puppet right there is. Ooh, super creepy. Anyway, thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Please do check us out at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts, blogs, and a whole lot more. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for rocking with us, and keep on Doomsday Clocking.